Good morning, friends. Good to see you. Oh, man, oh, man. I like you guys. I really do like you guys. My name is Jordan. My wife, Lindsay, and I are some of the pastors here at East Hill, and it's just a joy to be with you. So I'm thrilled that we're in the same room at the same time. I want to welcome you if you are maybe relatively new to East Hill, if it's your first time, if it's your third time. I just want to say welcome to you specifically today. Thanks for showing up today. If you've been around East Hill for any amount of time, you know that this is a place that everyone is welcome, and it's okay to be a mess when you show up. You know what I'm talking about? It's okay to not be okay. And it doesn't matter what your morning was like, if you had the argument of the century on the way in with your spouse. Grace to you, you are welcome here. If you've come and you've checked your kids in, like me, and we have 3 kids under 4, what are we doing? Why? Let's just talk about that for 45 minutes, huh? What do we... But if you're like me and you checked your kids in this morning and thought, okay, all of my kids are checked in, sweetie, let's go out to the parking lot and just sleep in the car. You made it, you're here, and you are welcome at East Hill. So I just want to welcome you guys. Pastors Keith and Pastors Coco, they send their love. They're in the Dominican Republic, like Ryan said, and they're in Barbados. Keith sent me a picture of him sitting on the beach reading a book with like an umbrella in the ocean, and I'm like, you suck, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not cool. My goodness. Hey, we had a baby 6 weeks ago, okay? Yeah. Yes, and I'm showing you these pictures because I know that's what you want to see this morning. So I'm going to give you what you want, okay? Look at that. Look how cute she is. Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow. I haven't slept in a month. Okay. Today we're going to be continuing a series of talks that we've been in for quite some time now, looking at the message of Jesus and looking at the mission of Jesus. His message and his mission. We're going to continue these talks today. And if you have your Bibles, you can open up to the book of Mark, chapter 10. It's in the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You can look at the book of Mark, chapter 10, and we're going to be zeroing in on verse 32 through 52. We're going to look at a chunk of scripture in Mark chapter 10 today. Now, here's what I love about this story, and here's what I love, quite frankly, about the person of Jesus, is that Jesus comes with a message, amen? He comes and he says some things, he teaches some things, and so he's coming with a message, but then Jesus also comes with a mission. He does some stuff. He models some things. He demonstrates his message in a tangible and a real way. How many of you know if Jesus just came with a message, that would be really lame? If he just came and said some stuff and then just whoop, disappeared, we wouldn't have anything to work with. But Jesus came with a message. He came with good news. But then he also demonstrated it. There was a mission aspect to what Jesus brought to us. He said some things, but then he also did some things in our midst. And so that's what I love about Jesus today. And we're going to look at a story where we see not only Jesus teaching some things, but we also see him doing some things and modeling some things for us. I want to propose today. I want to propose that you might know Jesus, but not be participating in his mission. You might know some things about Jesus, but you might not be doing Jesus-y things. Are you with me? Or here's even one better. You might know who Jesus cares about, but not be caring about who Jesus knows. Are you with me today? There's a very, very distinct possibility that we could know a lot about Jesus. And this is first service, friends. I know a lot of you in this room have been in the church. You've been in the seats. You know the story of Jesus. But I want to propose today that you might know Jesus, but might not be actively in his mission. And how easy it is to know some things, but fail to do some things. Are you with me? So today, I want to look at a story where Jesus encounters 2 different audiences. He has a moment with his disciples, and then he has a moment with a blind man on the streets, and they're back to back. And I want to contrast these two stories because I believe there's something in the contrast between these two moments with Jesus in Mark 10 that holds some value and holds some significance for you and I today. There's something about these two stories where there's almost, you almost can find yourself in the story. Have you ever had that moment in Scripture where you're reading it and going, that's me? Anyone ever had that moment before? So I want to invite you to find yourself in the story today, in either one of the stories, and realize that you are in the story, but on some other real level, the story is in you. That story is playing out inside of you. And you might identify with one or the other more, or if you're like me, you might realize both of these stories are at war within me all the time, okay? They might be at war within you today. So if you have your Bibles, open up to the book of Mark, chapter 10. A bit of context before we get started. Jesus, in the book of Mark, and in all the Gospels, has gathered his crew, his super team, okay? He's gathered his disciples, and these disciples are like teenagers, okay? They're like 17, 18 years old, and Jesus calls them and says, come follow me, and they drop their nets, and they follow Jesus. So Jesus has assembled his team, and he travels around Israel, Palestine, doing miracles and signs and wonders and preaching about the kingdom of God. And he's going around doing, like I say, Jesus-y things, okay? Him and his crew. And we come to this moment where Jesus he's done ministry all around Israel, and he is heading towards Jerusalem for the climax of the story. And we know, and Jesus knows, that he's heading to Jerusalem to die. He's heading to Jerusalem to give his life over to the rulers and authorities, and he's going to die. And he's trying to get his disciples to understand. It's just not clicking. These punk kids that are following Jesus, they aren't connecting the dots, okay? And Jesus is like, how do I get you to understand that I'm gonna die? Do you get it? And so Jesus in this story is trying to get them to understand, here's the game plan here, boys. This isn't going to end like you think it's going to end. So they're making their way to Jerusalem. And we pick up the text in Mark chapter 10, verse 32. If you have your Bibles, it starts like this. They were on their way up to Jerusalem, with Jesus leading the way. And the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. And Jesus said, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death, hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him, spit on him, flog him, and kill him. 3 days later, I'm coming back, baby. Okay. So he huddles his team. He's like, all right, huddle, team huddle. Like Jerusalem is like a couple miles away. They're on the hill. He's like, okay, we're going there. Team huddle before we do this thing. Let's go. Circles him up, and Jesus probably went on one knee like Tim Tebow. I don't know. Maybe he did. Okay. So he just boom, one knee, huddle, and he goes, all right, listen up, boys. Here's the plan. We're going there. I'm going to hand myself over to the rulers and authorities. They're going to beat me. They're going to flog me. They're going to spit on me and mock me, and then I'm going to die. Sound good? And all these punk 16-year-old kids were like, hey, Jesus, man, I'm not the expert here. You're the quarterback. I'm not trying to take your position here. You're the quarterback in this thing. Just sounds like a bad plan, okay? It just sounds like I think we can cook something up that's better here, Jesus. And so Jesus has this huddle and says, here's the story, here's the play. And in verse 35, it goes on. It says, then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus after the little holy huddle, and they go, teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Oh, okay. Any parents in the room? Okay, do you ever have the moment where you're going into the grocery store, but you're in the parking lot and you're pulling them out of the car seats, and you kind of huddle your kids up and you go, oh, okay, listen. Listen. We need milk, we need eggs, we need bread, we need nothing else. There are 3 things. We're going to go into that store, and so help me God. If you throw a fit, we're going to have a problem on our hands. Do you understand the game plan? I do this with my kids. I look at David, my 2-year-old, and I explain something to him. David, do you understand? Yes. Emmy, do you understand? Yes, Daddy, we understand. Okay. You have to, it's like Jesus is like gathering his boys before the grocery store and going, listen, we've got a plan here. Execute the plan. I'm the quarterback. Ready, break. And immediately after this huddle, James and John roll up and they're like, okay, hey, teach. Just one thing. Can you just do for us whatever we tell you to do? No, Jesus has just explained, I'm going to go give my life as a ransom. I'm going to go die. And they're like, hey, before you die, can you just kind of take care of everything that we need? Can you just listen to us? Could you imagine? I'm not Jesus. I would have responded very differently in this story. I would have probably said something really snarky like, have you heard anything that I just said? I'm going to die, and you're asking me to do some things for you? What do you? So they say, Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. And he looks at them graciously and says, what do you want me to do for you? And they replied. And actually, if you look in like the other gospels, the other 4 gospel accounts, it's not in Mark, but it's in the other ones. It says that they brought their mom with them, which makes it even more embarrassing, okay? It says that James and John brought their mom with them, which just makes it so horrible. Like, these 2 punk kids with pimples, and they brought their mom, and they're like, Jesus, would you do for us whatever we want? Okay. I just get a kick out of the story. So they say that Jesus says, what do you want me to do for you? And they replied, and they say, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. And Jesus responds and says, you don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? Now, these images of cup and baptism is the first thing Jesus does, and the cup is the last. So Jesus is like bookending his entire ministry going, can you do what I'm about to do? And all of these words like baptism and cup are these code words. They're like these double meanings to mean death. Jesus is saying, I'm going to die. Can you die as well? Are you ready? Are you prepared? Are you ready to die? Because that's what this thing is. That's the play I've called here. Are you prepared to lay down your life like me? And here's what they say. We can. We can. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, we can. Yeah, we're good. When I was 15 years old, I was trying to raise a bunch of money to go on a trip with my dad. I needed to raise $3,000 in one summer. How many of you know as a 15-year-old, that's a really difficult task. You have to mow a lot of lawns. Are you with me? So I was accepting jobs from anybody, okay? I was 15, and I was just saying yes to any job anybody had, yard work, whatever. And there was a guy that was trying to redo his patio. And as you can see, I'm not really built for manual labor, okay? It's not really built. It's not in the genes. So, but I was just desperate for a job of any kind, anything that would pay. And so this guy was redoing his cement patio on his back, and he's like, "Have you ever run a jackhammer?" And I was desperate. I just said, "Yeah, I got it. Yeah." I don't even know. How do you plug it in? Is it like a cord thing that you just plug into the wall? No. So I just said yes, and I show up to the job. And he just hands me a jackhammer, and he's like, all right, bro, just break this up. I'll see you in a bit. Who has operated one of these things? Anyone in the room? They should not give those to kids. I imagine that's what the conversation was like with James and John. Jesus says, are you prepared to drink the cup and be baptized? Are you prepared to die like I am? And these punk kids go, yeah, we're in. Yeah, we got it. Yeah, we're in. And Jesus says to them, verse 39, it says, you will drink the cup that I drink, and you will be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with. But to sit at my right and my left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those whom have been prepared. And that word prepared is like this lifelong journey. He's like, those places of honor in my kingdom, those are for those who have done the work of dying to themselves. And Jesus is looking at these punk kids going, I don't think you understand what you're saying. I don't think you know what you're getting into here. Verse 41. It says, when the 10 heard about this, now the other 10 disciples, when the other 10 disciples heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. They were like sucking up to Jesus. They were like sucking up to the teacher. And the rest of the class was like, oh, really? You're doing that? Teacher's pet card? Really, James? Come on. We're all... So Jesus realizes what's happening in his crew, and he calls them together in verse 42. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Not so with you. And you could imagine they were probably standing just a few miles out from Jerusalem, where all of the rulers were. And Jesus says, hey, these so-called rulers, everybody in charge, their view of leadership is ruling over and exercising authority over people. And in the Greek, it's referring to like tyrannical, like abusive power. Jesus is pointing at this power center and going, that's how they do leadership. Status, prestige, abuse of power, oppression of people below them so that they can have status and success and wealth and power. That's how they do things. And then he looks at his boys and says, not so with you. But now in the Greek, this is like sarcastic. Jesus is being like really, really sarcastic. He's like, hey, that's how they do things? You guys don't know anything about that, do you? He's playing with them. Jesus is like, oh, but you guys don't know. I mean, no, you guys aren't really worried about your status or your comfort or your power, authority. You're not really concerned about those things. And Jesus says, instead, whoever wants to become great among you, you must be a servant. Jesus is laying down his mission statement. This is what Jesus came to do and to model to us. He says, whoever wants to be the greatest must be a servant. Whoever wants to be the first must be slave of all. Now, back in this day, a slave would have had one master. But for Jesus to say, you must be slave to everyone, this would have been, it would have been a new category. He says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a what? Ransom for many. And that word ransom is this image of like slaves being lined up and someone coming and purchasing a slave and paying the price to secure a slave's freedom. So Jesus says, I've come to pay the ransom for many. Verse 46. It says, then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, they were leaving the city, a blind man named Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus. Now, the word Timaeus means unclean or forgotten. So this blind beggar on the side of the road named Bartimaeus, the son of the forgotten, the son of the unclean. He was sitting by the roadside begging. In 47, it says, when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. It says, many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped, and he called him. He said, call him, call him. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you. Isn't that such a great line? Cheer up, on your feet. It's like Dave, like off you pop, like Dave Kelly or something. Like, off you pop, let's go, come on. Right? Stand up, let's go. On your feet, he's calling you. Now check this out. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. And Jesus asked him this question, what do you want me to do for you? Oh, okay. Have we heard that question before? Jesus is being so clever and kind of like how the young kids say today, Jesus is being kind of savage right now. You know what I'm saying? He's just kind of being like, he's just like messing with his boys. What do you want me to do for you? And here's what Bartimaeus says. He says, Rabbi, I want to see. I want to see. And Jesus said, go, your faith has healed you. And immediately he received his sight and he followed Jesus along the road. Lindsay and I went to Hood River a few days ago. We were in our house, and in one of those moments as parents with young children where you just think, if I do not get out of my house right now, I'm going to freak out. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where you just feel cooped up, you just feel like these kids are driving me insane. We need to strap them in a car seat. Okay? I don't care where we go, Lindsay, we just need to go somewhere where these kids are strapped in the back seat, okay? So we just hopped in the car. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon. You know, the sun is already setting at 3:30. I don't know how that's possible, but like it's already getting dark, and we just said, we gotta get on the road. And so we get our kids in the car, and we start driving up to Hood River. And we just thought, it's gonna be a beautiful drive. So as we're driving up the 84 through the Columbia River Gorge, the trees are every spectrum of green and red and yellow and orange. And we are just driving in awe of God's creation. And we get to Hood River. And there's this waterfront park, if you've been there before, and it's just this great park. And we brought our kids, and it's got this rock wall in the middle of it. If you've ever been there before, it's got this really big rock wall thing that you can climb. And it's right on the edge where it's like too big for kids, but then also dads, we kind of want to climb it too. You know what I'm talking about? Any dads in the room like see a kid's toy and you're like, yeah, son, let me try that, right? Like, just because it's awesome, okay? So I'm like, I kind of want to climb it. My kids don't want to climb it, okay? So we didn't touch it the whole time. But on the way out, it was getting cold. It was just, the sun was dropping, and it was getting very, very cold. So we said, let's go, kids, and we start walking back to the van. And Emmy, on the way back, Emmy stops by the rock wall and touches it and goes, Daddy, I want to climb this. And it's way too big for her. If you know my daughter, she's just barely 4 years old. And she touches the rock wall, and it's like 8 or 10 feet high, okay? I can't reach the top of it. She goes, Daddy, I want to climb this. And I said, let's climb this thing. Because I secretly wanted to climb it too, okay? So I walk over to Emmy, and we stand at the bottom of this rock wall, and I begin to just gently coach her. I'm not lifting her, I'm not doing the work for her, but just standing behind her, touching her back just enough to know that I'm there. And just kind of coaching her, tapping some rocks. Okay, put this foot there. Maybe put this arm, try that right there. And just slowly working her way up this wall. And I have some pictures of what this looked like. And it's one of the great pleasures as a dad to just grab the little butt that you made. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know where that's from. Okay. So I'm just helping her, just guiding her up this rock wall. And she gets to the point where I have fully extended my arms. She's now probably 6 or 7, 8 feet off the ground, okay? It's to the point now where I can't lift her to the top. I can't push her to the top. I have to take my hands away, climb up the other side, and reach her at the top and pull her the last couple of feet. And we make it to the top. And that's us standing. So we stood there and we watched this sunset over Hood River. And then I pulled my son David up with me. And how many of you know as a parent, you get to that place where it's like, okay, I can catch one of you, I can't catch both of you. So you all just got to stay on top of this rock, okay? You're on your own. So I'm up there with my 2 kids looking at the sunset, and now it's time to go down. And I didn't think about this part of the story, okay? I didn't think this through, okay? It's time to go down. And so I hop down, and I'm holding my arms out to Emmy and saying, jump, jump. And it was like a 7 or 8 minute exchange where I was saying, Emmy, you can trust me. You can trust Daddy. I will catch you. You can trust me. I'm not gonna drop you. I was saying things like, you can trust me. I'll catch you. I won't let you fall. And she was saying things like, Daddy, I can't, it's too far. I'm scared. I come closer, Daddy. I can't, this is as far as I can reach. I need you closer. I can't do it. It's too far. I don't want to fall. And she said the cutest thing. She says, Daddy, I want my tummy on your tummy. Like, oh, it's just the cutest thing I've ever heard. And I'm stuck because I can't reach her. I need her to trust me and free fall the 18 inches between the ledge and my hands. I need her to trust me with those 18 inches. It's the only way I'm going to be able to get her down. I'm learning recently. I'm learning that following Jesus is it's like an adventure, and I have to trust him. I have to risk. There's an 18-inch drop where I've got to just fall into the arms of my Father and trust that he's going to catch me. I'm learning that when I'm following Jesus in this journey, I can either have control over my life or have an adventure with Jesus, but I can't have both. I can't have both. I can either have control over my future, I can either have this death grip on how my life should look and where I should go and what should happen in my life, and I get to have control, or I can have an adventure, but I can't do both. I'm realizing that following Jesus always has two ingredients. There's always fear and there's always amazement. There's always risk and there's always wonder. If you go back to verse 32 where we started this story, it says, with Jesus leading the way. Jared, you could throw verse 32 on the screen. With Jesus leading the way, it says the disciples were amazed and those that followed were afraid. How many of you know that when Jesus is leading the way, there's always a concoction of both fear and amazement, risk and wonder? There has to be both. And I'm discovering that I can either control my life or I can submit my life, but I can't do both. And in this story, we see James and John asking Jesus for control of their life and for comfort. James and John come to Jesus and say, Jesus, here's my plan. Here's our plan for our life, okay? Here's how we see this thing playing out. In this story, Jesus, that we have written, we are in charge, okay? Okay, you're president, but I'm VP, and James, you're Secretary of State. So we're vying for cabinet positions here, okay? James and John are like, here's the plan. Keep us comfortable. Keep us in charge. Keep us in control of this story. We want to be on top of society. And then Bartimaeus says, I don't want to be in charge of society. I don't want power. I don't want fame. I don't want glory. I don't want control. I just want to see. I just want to see you, Jesus. I don't want to be on top of society. I just want to be able to participate in society. I just want to be in the game. There's two stories. There's two moments. James and John and Bartimaeus. What can I do for each of you? And we get two very, very different answers. And here's the interesting part. All three of these guys, they're all blind. They're all blind. One man was physically blind, but these two guys over here were spiritually blind. They couldn't see Jesus for who he really was, and they couldn't trust him with their life. And Jesus asks both parties, what can I do for you? And James and John want the power and the control. They want the status and the image and the success. They don't want to fail. They want to succeed. And the other man simply wants to be healed. He simply wants to be restored. He wants to see Jesus. So they came to Jesus and said, Jesus, can you please rubber stamp my plan? Can you please put a spiritual Jesus stamp on my plan and approve it so that we can get on with this empire building that we're all doing? You know what I'm saying? And Jesus says, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know. Here's why this story moves me and why I don't like it. Because I am James and I am John. I am James and I am John. There is an attitude in my heart more often than not where I come to Jesus and say, Jesus, just keep me comfortable. I've set this thing up and it's perfect. Can you just put a stamp of approval on it? And Jesus goes, oh, no, you don't know what you're asking. You don't know what you're asking. Here's what I find interesting. James and John were only with Jesus for 3.5 years, but 3.5 years was his entire ministry. James and John had gotten in on this thing at the ground level. They got in first with Jesus. They had been with him all along. How many of us in this room have been in the church for a little bit of time? Yeah, I grew up in the church. I remember like crawling under the seats and building forts out of these seats in the church I grew up in. They were putting the carpet on the stage when my parents bought an old drugstore and turned it into a church, and we built a stage much like this one, and they were putting carpet on it, and the carpet was ugly. It just really was. And before they carpeted it, I was just an infant, and I had, let's just say, my diaper did not fulfill what it was designed to do, and I had really made a mess all over the stage, and they just cleaned it and carpeted over it, okay? I've been in the church for a long time. And here's what I find to be true is that when you follow Jesus for some amount of time, there's this drift. There's a drift that can happen in your heart. And it happened to James and John. In just 3.5 years, they went from being the punk kids on the side of the shore of the Sea of Galilee fishing, and Jesus rolled up and said, follow me. And what did they do? They just chucked their nets. And they followed Jesus. They gave everything. And in just 3.5 years, they went from that moment to now vying for positions in his cabinet and saying, Jesus, let's take over Rome, let's take over Jerusalem and put us in charge. In just 3.5 years. Friends, how easy is it? I mean, I know many of you know this. I find that my heart can shift from my first love with Jesus to something that has me at the center of it. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's so subtle, and it happens slowly, but we find ourselves in a place where our relationship with Jesus becomes, Jesus, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? Don't make me change. Jesus, just stamp my plan, and let's just keep going forward. Our hearts can shift. We can see it in our marriages sometimes, in relationships where it can shift and drift into something that it was never meant to be. And Jesus brings them back to the heart of the gospel with this moment with Bartimaeus. And it was almost like James and John and the disciples were standing back as Jesus called out to Bartimaeus as he threw his cloak. They probably had a flashback to when they threw their nets. And they said, they probably had this nostalgic feeling as they watched him interact with this Bartimaeus and thought to themselves, what happened to me in the last 3.5 years? I used to be like that guy. I used to be like that new Christian. I used to be like that guy who just came to church for the first time and was on fire for Jesus. And I would imagine some of them probably had this feeling of like, oh, isn't that so cute, those new converts? You guys with me? Isn't that so cute? Oh, he's throwing his cloak. Oh, I did that when I first met Jesus, right? But now I'm somebody, right? Now I know, I'm on the inside. I know how this works, right? They probably had this feeling like, oh, that's so cute. When we were, Lindsay and I, when we youth pastored just 2 or 3 years ago, we had a student. And, at the end of my sermons, I would give like an invitation. I would say, does anyone want to follow Jesus for the first time? And I would pray with students to receive Jesus. How many of you know that's a really, really precious moment when a young person gives over control of their life? And I would give this invitation at the end of my sermons quite frequently, and there was one student, we'll call him Caleb. Caleb, at the end of every sermon, would raise his hand to be saved, to receive Jesus for the first time, every time, right? And I would pray with Caleb over and over, and I started to realize, wait a minute, I think he's just raising his hand every time. And at first, I was a little confused. I thought, maybe, is this just not sticking? Is something just not landing? Like, it's just not sticking? And then I started to get a little bit bothered by it. It's like, okay, am I doing something wrong? Is this, what's happening here? But then I realized I really want to be like Caleb. Oh, I really want to be like Caleb. I want to be the kind of person who gives my heart to Jesus over and over again. Over and over again, I want to surrender control like Caleb did, like Bartimaeus, our blind friend Bart. I want to be like Bart, you know what I'm saying? I want to give my life and throw the cloak aside. And now Bartimaeus' cloak, it would have been his jacket during the day. It would have been his pillow at night. It would have been the only thing that he owned. And during the day, as he was begging, it would have been the collection bin for loose change. And people would have thrown money on his cloak. So for Bartimaeus to throw his cloak aside was him saying, I don't need a pillow, I don't need a jacket, and I don't need an income. I am fully dependent on Jesus. Do you see how radical this is? Do you see how radical it was for Bartimaeus to go, okay, Jesus is over there. I can't even see him, but I can hear him. And I'm going to throw my cloak aside and start wandering to Jesus. I find it interesting. Did you notice that Jesus stops and he calls him? Kind of inconsiderate when you're working with a blind man if you don't, I don't know. Kind of a jerk move on Jesus' part here, okay? He stops and he just calls him, come on over. Come over here. And the blind man stands up and with no help from anybody, he's just being mocked, has to slowly stumble his way to Jesus. He probably stubbed his toes a couple times. He probably tripped over some rocks on the way there. But he slowly followed the voice of his rabbi in the dark. How many of you know that's what life feels like sometimes? Is God is just calling you. He's speaking your name. And he's saying, come follow me. Come follow me. And it takes a walk of faith to slowly maneuver your way closer to the voice of your Father. I wish that Jesus had just gone over in this story and just picked him up and carried him all the way to Jerusalem. That would have been a little bit more nice, you know what I'm saying? But Jesus doesn't. He stops and he calls him. He says, follow me. Follow me. Your faith has made you well. I see myself in James and I see myself in John. I'm relearning that I can either have control of my life or I can have adventure with Jesus, but I cannot have both. I have to choose. I have to choose. Somewhere along the line in my life, I have picked up the narrative. I've picked up the script in my life that I have to do everything on my own. I don't know what your script is. I don't know what the story you were taught as a kid that you've carried into your adult life. But somewhere along the line in my life, I started to believe that I have to make everything happen on my own strength. I'm a firstborn, type A personality. I just can pull myself up and just make it happen. And I somehow believe that I have to be the one. I have to be the strength. I have to be the one who makes things happen. And I'm learning that Jesus is looking at me going, I've already paid that price. Why are you paying it again? I've already bought your freedom. I've already bought your liberation. It's already been secured for you. I have done the heavy lifting. Why are you picking that thing up again? I've already lifted it for you. I've already bought your freedom. At what point in my journey did I believe that following Jesus is about my success and my image? At what point in my life with Jesus have I been duped into believing that the whole point of Jesus' mission, the whole reason he came and died was so that he can make me comfortable? When did I begin to believe that Jesus gave his life so that I could be in control of mine? He died so that I could release control of my life. It's almost like he was standing at the edge of the rock wall saying, you can jump, you can trust me. It's almost like Jesus went to the cross and died and said, hey, can you drink the cup? Can you be baptized? Yes, I think you can. You have to lay down your life. And before you do, I'll model it for you. I'll show you. I'll show you. I'll go before you. I'll die and show you that there's life on the other side. When you lay down your life and trust me with your life, there's resurrection on the other side. But you have to trust me. You have to trust me. You got to fall 18 inches and trust that I'm going to catch you. But Jesus, I don't want to fail. Jesus, I don't want to give you full control because that would mean I have no control. And Jesus says, yeah, that's where the life is. What I love about this story is that Jesus shows us that service and humility are the real avenues to freedom. That liberation is actually found in humility and surrender, not in power and status. You don't have to do it on your own. Jesus already paid the ransom for your life. So he threw his cloak aside, just like the young men threw their nets aside. I want to propose today that pride and control, my pride and my control, will always prevent me from continuing an adventure with Jesus. My pride and my control will always prevent me from taking the next step with Jesus. But here's what happens. Humility and risk will always start a new adventure. It'll always start a new adventure. Lord, here's been my prayer. Lord, I just want an adventure with you. I want to go on an adventure. Help me risk. Help me release control of my life. You might know, if you've been through any form of addiction or recovery, when you try to cover your own wounds on your own power, you just become more enslaved. You just become more captive than you were before. Can I propose to you today that Jesus has paid the price for your liberation? So quit double paying. He's already paid it. And for me, I can quit running around like I know what I'm doing, or that I somehow have some power or strength to cover my own brokenness, and I don't. I need Jesus to cover me. Jesus, I need you. I want to propose that there are those in our city, there are families in our city who are desperate for a touch from Jesus. There are people in our city like the blind Bartimaeus on the side of the road saying, I can't see Jesus, but I just hope his message is what I hope it is. I hope the good news is actually good news for me. I hope this whole thing I hope this whole Jesus thing is what I hope it is. There's folks in our city who are hungry for Jesus. And can I challenge us today that we are the ones that get to say to folks, cheer up, stand up. He's calling you. He's calling you. Jesus wants to be with you. So Emmy was perched on the ledge. And I'm saying, Emmy, you can trust me. Daddy's not going to let you fall. You can trust me. Emmy, do you know that I love you? And she was saying things like, Daddy, it's too far. Daddy, I don't want to fall. Daddy, I'm scared. Daddy, I want your tummy on my tummy. And we stood there for a while as my arms were outreached to her, saying, Emmy, you can trust me. Now, I wish that Emmy had just kind of like hopped off and trusted me, but I'm a little impatient as a dad, so this metaphor kind of breaks down at this point. But I stretched my arms out to Emmy, and finally I just kind of grabbed one of her knees and just gave it a good tug. Just give it a good tug. Not too hard, but just a little, just to get the ball rolling, okay? I gave her a little tug. And the 18-inch drop, the free fall between the ledge of the rock wall and my arms, it felt like an eternity for Emmy, okay? But you should have seen the look on her face. The look on my daughter's face as she dropped 18 inches from the ledge of the rock was a mixture of fear and amazement. It was a mix of risk and wonder. And she fell into my arms, and her tummy was on my tummy. And she just began to cry, but it wasn't like a sad cry. It wasn't like a I'm hurt kind of cry. It was like a cry where you could feel the adrenaline just shaking her whole body. And she just began to cry. And I just held her for a few minutes and said, it's okay. I love you, and Daddy would never let you fall. You can trust me. And she said, Daddy, I love you. But let's not do that again, is what she said. Let's not do that again. And we got in the car, and I buckled up, and she said, Daddy, can we come back here again tomorrow? I want to invite you today to release control. I want to invite you today to risk with Jesus because there's life on the other side of surrender. He's a good father, and he's going to catch you. He's not going to let you fall. But there will be a moment where you have to stumble your way to Jesus, simply following the voice of your rabbi and saying, Jesus, I just want to see. I just want to see you. I just want more of you. So today, I want to extend an invitation to you today. I know many of you have been in the church for a long time, but I'm talking to you this morning. I'm talking to me. For those of us in the room who'd say, man, I've been following Jesus for a long time, but I have got complacent. I have started to make my adventure with Jesus about my own comfort and my own plan, and I'm ready to risk again. If that's you, can you just raise your hand? I'm ready to risk again. Jesus, I want more. I want risk and I want wonder. Help me, Jesus, release control. Can I just be bold this morning? Could you just come up to the front and I want to pray with you? If that's you this morning and say, I just want to take a new step with Jesus. I've been following. Could you just come up right now, right up to the front? And we're going to have leaders that just lay their hands on you and pray for you. If you're in the room this morning and it's like, man, I'm just scared. I've been living out of fear. I've been allowing fear and safety to control every decision in my life, and I'm done. I'm ready for an adventure with Jesus. Now, if you're on staff or you're a leader or you know someone up here that you want to come pray for, can you come and join us and begin to lay hands on these folks and pray for them? If you're a leader or if you're on staff, come up and lay hands on folks. I'm ready for a new adventure. Jesus, I'm going to cast my cloak aside. I'm going to cast my net aside. Whatever that cloak is that you've been wearing to mask your hurt and your brokenness, can I tell you that you can cast it aside because Jesus is trustworthy. He's a good father and you can trust him with the 18-inch drop. He's going to catch you. He's not going to let you fall. For those of us, I think for some of us in the room, man, Jesus, I've got a paycheck and it's solid. Whatever you do, Jesus, don't touch that. Whatever you do, you can have full reign in my life except this, don't touch it. Maybe it's a different script. Maybe it's you've got to do everything on your own. Jesus invites you to let him be the leader. I don't know what script, what story has led you to live a life of fear, but Jesus says, trust me. Watch, I'm going to give my life and show you that there's life on the other side. You can do the same. You can drink the cup that I drink. You can go into the baptism that I went into because I'm trustworthy. So I want to spend a few moments praying. Leaders, you can begin to pray out loud over these folks. And Dave's going to lead us in a song. If you're still seated, I want to invite you to do business with the Lord this morning. I want you to have a moment with the Lord and say, God, what areas of my life have I yet to surrender to you? What areas of my heart are still cloaked and guarded from your presence? Lord, help me surrender. And Dave's going to lead us, and at the end, I want to pray a blessing over you all. Let's sing together.